This is Glenview, a 26-room high Victorian mansion completed in 1877. The 23-acre suburban home was the primary residence of the John Trevor family until 1922. The Hudson River Museum opened here in 1924 as a general museum of science and art, and the grounds became a public park. As a house and a museum, Glenview derives much of its special identity from its location on the east bank of the Hudson River. The Yonkers waterfront has always been a combination of dense commerce and scenic residential areas. Until 1969, Glenview stood alone as the Hudson River Museum's only building. The interiors of Glenview were used for art and history exhibitions, and in 1956, even a planetarium in the dining room. In 1929, the museum still looked very much like a residence from the outside. But inside, displays range from Hudson River paintings to industrial looms and even an elephant. Throughout the 19th century, the Hudson Riverfront was a popular residential location, valued for its scenery, transportation convenience, and even recreational boating. Before the arrival of the railroad in 1849, much of Yonkers looked like the Glenview landscape, and all downtown trade and industry were due to river traffic. But the railroad accelerated development, and Yonkers changed in character from a village to a suburb and then to an urban center. Living in Glenview from 1877 to 1922, members of the Trevor household experienced the area's transition from the building of large estates to their division into small lots for middle-class buyers. These new suburbanites also appreciated the scenic locale and ease of commuting. Glenview was a magnet for a more modest middle-class suburban neighborhood that mushroomed on the open land around it. At the same time, downtown Yonkers became a crowded industrial center, employing thousands of factory workers. Since the 1850s, John Trevor had been a Wall Street financier dealing in gold bullion and was living near Union Square in New York City. In 1861, he married Louisa Stewart, and he and his bride moved to the suburbs of Yonkers. They had one son, Henry, but Louisa suffered a long illness, probably consumption, and died in 1867. After 3 years as a widower, Trevor remarried. His second wife was Emily Norwood. Several years later, they planned Glenview. The Trevors moved one block north to their new house in 1877 with their children, Mary, who was 6, Emily 3, Henry 12, and several servants. A year later, they had a son and named him John Bond after his father. The family spent spring, summer, and fall at Glenview, and Trevor continued to commute to Wall Street from either the small station at Point Street or the main Yonkers station, enlarged and rebuilt in 1878. John Trevor was already a public figure in Yonkers before he built Glenview. He and his business partner built the Warburton Avenue Baptist Church, and he was a founder and supporter of the hospital that became St. John's Riverside. As part of her charity work, Mrs. Trevor brought baskets of fruit from Glenview to the hospital. Like many other wealthy suburbanites, Trevor was inspired by gentleman farmers in English country houses. The younger John Trevor wrote in his memoirs that as a child, Glenview seemed a paradise. After the senior Mr. Trevor's death in 1890, Mrs. Trevor, Emily, and John Jr. continued to live at Glenview for most of the year, while Henry and Mary soon married and started families. From 1909 until her death in 1922, Mrs. Trevor lived alone with Emily. Her grandchildren would visit, playing in the private park Trevor and his gardeners had created. Glenview is a perfect example of how suburban houses and country estates both took advantage of their natural surroundings. Trevor and architect Charles Clinton must have given its high position on the lot primary consideration. John Trevor became a passionate horticulturalist in Yonkers. He fancied himself a sort of country squire, creating naturalistically landscaped grounds and flower beds around his house, as well as growing fruits and vegetables and raising cattle. For 14 years, he was aided in these endeavors by John Whiffler, a German immigrant of his own age, who lived with his family in the estate's superintendent's cottage. Together, they developed a signature bronze chrysanthemum called the Glenview Mum. Glenview's architect, Charles Clinton, is best known for the 7th Regiment Armory at Park Avenue and 66th Street in New York City, where he used a central tower over the entrance, similar to Glenview's. Windows and views were a main planning element of country houses, reminding us how connected nature and art were at the time. Inside the house, Clinton followed a typical suburban layout of a great hall flanked by a parlor and a library, with dining room and kitchen at the back. All of these rooms could be closed for privacy. The executors of Trevor's estate had auctioned most of Glenview's contents, so early efforts of restoration centered on furnishing the rooms and on pioneering research into Eastlake style. Over the past 30 years, curators have assembled and arranged the present displays based on documentary evidence of Glenview and its period. What we know about the original furnishings comes from the 1922 auction catalog, from an inventory in Mrs. Trevor's will, and from 2 existing Trevor-era interior photogravures. Glenview's new construction incorporated the latest indoor innovations and conveniences, such as central heating, gas lighting, modern toilets, and indoor running water. A hand-operated dumbwaiter served the 2nd and 3rd floors, and the kitchen was supplied with every modern improvement. While John Trevor engaged local contractors to build Glenview, as the period photogravure of the parlor shows, its design and decor were far from that of a rustic summer cottage. Glenview was being built at the same time as the Philadelphia World's Fair, celebrating America's 1876 centennial. The displays of English art furniture revolutionized American design and interior decoration in the United States, where the style was referred to as Eastlake, after Charles Locke Eastlake, author of the influential book Hints on Household Taste. Trevor was among the excited consumers who visited the fair, where he purchased exotica, like Japanese vases, as well as fireplace grates, and an award-winning painting by Anna Lee Merritt, a Philadelphia artist living in England. A period photograph of Glenview's sitting room shows a patent recliner and tufted Turkish chairs. Even in the more formal parlor, the rocker and upholstered lounge would suggest that despite its fashionable design, Glenview was furnished with opportunities for relaxation. This image of informality and comfort is recreated in the restored period rooms you see today. Mr. Trevor's will directed his executors to sell his property after his wife's death, if it were in the best interests of the estate and his children. The auction map advertising the sale divided the property into more than 300 lots. Yet the politicians and citizens of Yonkers, like John Trevor before them, appreciated Glenview for its open natural space, landscaping, and river views. The estate had become an oasis in the midst of the dense development that surrounded it, giving it renewed value. While countless grand residences were being demolished and their properties broken up, Trevor's executors negotiated with the city of Yonkers for a purchase of the entire estate. In 1924, with an adjacent power plant belching smoke and electric trolleys and automobiles reducing the distance from the industrial urban center to 5 minutes, the Yonkers Museum of Science and Arts made its debut. In 1948, it was renamed the Hudson River Museum. In 1969, the museum completed its first expansion, making way for the restoration to the period splendor you are about to enter.